Summer was full of swimming, late-night movies, and television, especially long hours of Netflix shows. The new school year was approaching quickly, and I did not know if I was prepared. English 117 was the class that seemed the most daunting. Going into the new school year, I had heard mixed reviews on the class. Some believed it had improved their writing immensely, others just didn't enjoy all of the writing. Delaying my every worry, I immersed myself in the new television show. I had many choices ranging from The Office to One Tree Hill. Both I had gotten mixed reviews on, similar to my upcoming experience in honors English. I asked a friend why they watched One Tree Hill, their immediate response was Nathan Scott, Nathan being the starring lead male in the show. When I asked people about the class, honors English, some people went on and on about the teacher instead of the actual class. I had to decide if I was going to do it to have a good teacher or if I actually enjoyed the subject. I decided to take all these pressing matters into my own hands, dive into the class, and learn for myself. As any start to the year, the first quarter was rocky and slow, just like the first few seasons of a television show. All of the information is thrown at you, and you have to adapt very quickly. You learn the background and the ropes of a class, like you would any television show. Sometimes, however, not all of the information is given to you. Some shows, like How I Met Your Mother, you are thrown right in the middle of the plot, and you have to adjust to understand what is happening. At first, all of this information is overwhelming and confusing. For some shows, like The Office, I was hooked by the humor, even if I didn't understand what was going on the entire time. When I entered English class, I was hooked by the fun things we were doing, even if I felt behind some of the time. Then, just when I felt settled in the class, I was hit with the portfolio. The task I thought at the time to be near impossible. This task required 6 extra essays, 2 rewrites, vocabulary practice, and practice in other areas of English. Like many essays in my portfolio, some of the episodes in the first couple seasons were confusing and uninteresting. These essays were far from perfect, with many grammatical errors, and I had to tighten up a few sentences. I hadn't found my voice yet. I wrote about topics that didn't reflect me and my experiences. All of these were fixable, but easier said than done. I did write one essay, however, that I was proud of. I wrote about my trip to Denali, Alaska. I wrote about my experience watching the mountains pass by as I sat in the car tour around the national park. This essay showed me hope that I'd be successful in English class. The same experience happens to many television shows. They can be turned around by a single episode or character. Everything is transformed and changes. By the end of the quarter, my writing still had to improve, but I was determined to succeed. When quarter 2 began, I had just begun to get used to my high school and my classes. English was still my hardest class, but the most engaging. By this time, I was also at about seasons 3 and 4 of my television shows. The dramatic literary climax of the television drama was approaching quickly. The second quarter seemed to go by in the blink of an eye. I've started to settle into the class and the pace of it, which is fast. Very fast. I felt like we were always something new we were writing about. I didn't mind the pace, but writing constantly was a true challenge. When I'd get home from school, I'd watch an episode or two of the show I was watching. By this time, I was pretty far into the show. I was in the middle of all the drama. This was the start of the big romances and the deadly secrets. This was usually the time when 2 characters got together after a long time of you waiting. While those characters were falling in love, I was finding my own, my love for short stories. This quarter we read so many that I seemed to become fond of them. I had found that my favorite is one called The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. We didn't read this book this year, but when we started to read more, I found I was very fond of them. Very much like seasons 3 and 4 of a show, quarter 2 went by fairly quick. In this quarter, we read the book The Catcher in the Rye as well. A book that is confusing, but when you step back and evaluate it, you realize all the connections you missed. Like we did with the book, I took a step back and looked at my struggles of first quarter. I decided not to procrastinate, and I dove right into writing my essays. This quarter showed my improvement from the last. I had started to write with voice, but my vocabulary was still lacking. My writing was just not written to the best of my ability. Spreading out my writing helped me create fewer mistakes and more improvement. My writing efficiency created fewer television opportunities. The gaps in the viewing time created suspense. I always enjoyed sitting down to watch an episode. I seemed to enjoy the writing and the shows more this quarter than I did the last. Nothing, however, could prepare me for what was to come next, except maybe a warning. Filled with chaos, there was nothing to prepare me for quarter 3. Quarter 3 was jam-packed with the research paper, Julius Caesar, and poetry slam, all subjects completely unknown by me. Quarter 3 was a turning point in the year, just like it was in a TV show. All this new material was forced upon me, and I had to learn quick. When I got home, I just wanted to forget all about the work and relax. At this point in the show, I was watching some things were changing, or being added. There was the introduction of new characters, breakups, and even more secrets. It could be said at this point in the school year and show was the major plot twist. We first began with poetry, a subject that I am not too skilled at, but in the long run improved my writing in my portfolio. Soon after we ended poetry, my writing became more descriptive. Before we could end the poetry unit, we had to do a poetry slam, where we had to stand in front of the class reading our poem about an important issue in the world. This made me nervous because unlike the actors I watch in my television shows, I get nervous talking in front of large groups of people, especially if I am sharing my work. I was not only afraid of being judged by my peers, but of public speaking in general. Every time I have to present a work of mine, my body would start to shake and my voice becomes unsteady. When my partner Grace and I finished the poem, I saw I had nothing to worry about, except maybe the giant research paper that came next. This major project was long, tiring, but worth it. I noticed a difference in my writing thanks to the sheer volume of writing along with the research paper. I saw a lot of growth from last quarter. Next came the Shakespeare unit. I had a love-hate relationship with it, much like Dwight and Jim's friendship in the television show The Office. Dwight and Jim constantly fight and pull pranks on each other, but deep down are friends. The Shakespeare unit was full of surprises. It felt like pranks pulled on me when we had to take the impossible quizzes on the reading material. A nice surprise was I actually enjoyed watching Shakespeare, but reading Shakespeare didn't hook me. I had felt settled into quarter 3, with my classes in the new school. Surviving the plot twist of quarter 3, school no longer felt new, and I was settled in. This quarter tested my newfound confidence to prepare me for the final quarter of the year. The final quarter of the year went by the quickest. There seemed to be less assignments and more discussion in class. We talked about topics such as religion, sexism, and racism. These are topics some of my favorite television shows tackle as well. In class discussions, I hesitated in the beginning to interject my ideas into the conversation, still afraid of public speaking. I soon began to talk more and more in the discussions, making myself more comfortable in the situation. These discussions had a purpose, of course. We were given an assignment to write about our world, whether it was progressing or regressing. This seemed to be the final task, my last speech, my last writing assignment, before handing the portfolio, of course. I tried to incorporate all I had learned. I used the correct MLA format, cleaned up my grammatical errors, and tightened up loose sentences. Overall, my writing improved, my vocabulary was stronger, and I tried to use more detail in stating facts. Little did I know this wasn't my last assignment. I had to create this end of the year video about my year in English 117, how I progressed from quarter 1 of the class to the quarter 4. The video portfolio is the final episode of the television show. Everything is wrapped up and all loose ends are tied. I look back at my work the way characters look back at their life. I reflect on my accomplishments and downfalls. I see how I have continued to grow throughout my year of English as a freshman. With all I have learned from English 117, I am confident that as I enter my sophomore year, I have the tools and ability to succeed and continue to grow my writing ability.